Hello there. I often have the feeling that it's the final hour of the final battle, of being really up against it. Why? Because everybody on this planet is unconscious, of course. The enemy is innocent, but still very dangerous. For whatever reason, it has pleased nature to create a kind of higher animal that is very active and that doesn't understand. What is wrong with the human understanding of life? What is wrong with science, say? Can we ask that question? Or do we consider that spirituality is something to be added to our existing knowledge? The knowledge that we can be so sure of. We. Well, spirituality actually is not necessarily about becoming a higher man. It is about becoming I. About leaving we and becoming I. They don't tell you that at school. There's a lot of things that we do not tell you because we does not understand. I was reading, and I have known for a long time, the first line of an ancient scripture, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. 2,000 years old or so it is. And the first line is, "The cessation of the mental modifications of the mind is yoga." The cessation of the mental modifications of the mind is yoga. You know how it is with these ancient scriptures, you read them and they have this hypnotic dream. It's like you're on a slow boat into the sunset in ancient India, right? But that's not the right way to read ancient scriptures or any scriptures. You should more read them just like any taxi driver would read them. In a very straightforward way. What does the first line say? It says that my mind is disturbed. And presumably when it stops being disturbed, then I will be in union with God. They were saying that 2,000 years ago, and the same problem is here today. There's really been not much progress. I've learnt a lot by doing the work with the many eyes, those characters. For instance, there are always several active at once, and they are of very different types. Some are very expansive and subtle, hang in the back. Some, like anger, are sharp and big and sort of take over the space. a great deal of our energy and aliveness clearly is flowing through them. And yet, people have talked for thousands of years of dissolving the ego, killing the ego, stopping the mind, and so on. There is not enough understanding of what this stuff is, because it's not going away, it is part of you. And in fact, how I understand it is that the top part of the human being is open, is unformed. That is the part after the fifth. That is the upper story. It is open. It's not tied together. It's open. And because it's open, there's a natural circulation of material there. And for some people, the top third of their person is unformed and remains unformed. It is like the rolling clouds. And in those people there's nothing really solid happens upstairs and doesn't bother them either. For some people, they see something, they catch something, they learn something, they think something, they are disturbed by something, and boom, something crystallizes, like precipitates out of the clouds, a kernel that becomes the core of one of the many eyes. And a certain journey begins then, because you go from being a person who only has rolling clouds upstairs to somebody who has something solid. And unfortunately, it is something that is forms in opposition. Anyway, there's a lot to learn about the many eyes. I'm not going to talk about that now. Our ideas about spirituality may not be very good. So what is wrong with science anyway? Well, what's wrong is that you are the instrument of life. Don't you want to be? Or would you prefer somebody to tell you what's what, and then you can take your instructions from them? Don't you want to fly? Can you imagine an eagle or an elephant waking up in the morning and saying, yeah, flying is overrated. You do it. I'll just sit here and watch you. And you can give me the evidence-based truth and I'll believe you. Now this morning, there's some heat in the air. A little bit of spring. The throttle is slowly widening. And there are two beautiful little magpies, a mating pair, busy flitting here and there with twigs in their beaks, and they are building a nest. And I don't know what time they start, 5, 6 in the morning. They work a few hours. And they preen their feathers, and they are a deep jet blue and white. And they are beautiful. They are strong. They are industrious. These creatures are wise and hard-working, and they love life. And they don't care about the evidence-based instructions that are coming down from the WHO. They wake up and they push that shit all away. And they say, I am. Even though they're so small. On this planet, everyone is so sure. Aren't people sure? Do you see people having doubts about anything? Everybody's got an opinion, everybody knows what's wrong and what to do. Actually, their intelligence is damaged. That's what it amounts to. Their spirit, in fact, is damaged. And whatever people think, it has no consequences, doesn't it? I mean, that's another problem. Those magpies outside, if they make a mistake, there are consequences. They lose their nest, they lose their life, they lose their mate. They lose their wings. They have to be tough and sharp. There are consequences for magpies, but for human beings, they think this, they think that, they do this, they do that. Doesn't seem to make all that much difference, does it? Human society has become domesticated. It's difficult to own something. That's why, since ancient times, in the Bible it says, whatever is given to you, burn it. And take what is not given to you. Take what they do not value. Take what they do not give you. Take not what they want to give you, but what they themselves have. That can be a good rule sometimes. So you can see anyway why Gurdjieff said that you should do everything not as others do. Gurdjieff's teaching is about woke. Woke simply means that the society no longer believes in the structures that exist and they exonerate themselves from any duties and responsibilities. And they have found that they can steal money and make a big mess. Gurdjieff's teaching is similar, it's just that once you free yourself, then you work 3 times as hard as you did before in order to straighten things out, in order to put the society back together. You break the rules upwards. You break the rules upwards. You excuse yourself from your responsibilities and then do 3 times as much. An interesting way to live, isn't it? How many people ever thought like that? Well, Gurdjieff didn't think much of Shakespeare. And last week I saw a movie, The Merchant of Venice. It was made in 2004, and Al Pacino was Shylock. And I've never seen The Merchant of Venice in my life, although I knew it was something about the old Jew. I was really surprised about this movie, The story is something like this. In ancient Venice, Christian Venice, there was a small group of Jews who lived there. And they were not appreciated. And pretty much the Christians kept to themselves, as they were the dominant force there. But one of them, Antonio, needed a loan and went to Shylock, the old Jew, and made a deal to borrow 3,000 ducats. And Shylock, who did not really like Christians very much, said, okay, I'll lend you the money, but if you fail to pay up, I want a pound of your flesh, of your body. I want to cut a pound of your body off. Literally. He was a pretty disgruntled old Jew. They signed the contract, and then in the intermediary time, Shylock's own daughter runs off with another Christian, stealing half his fortune at the same time. And then the big scene is at the end when Shylock is in front of the Duke and the judge because Antonio did not pay on time. And Shylock says, okay, I want my revenge. I want a pound of this man's flesh. And Antonio, at the last minute, turns up with double 6,000 ducats and says, Shylock, I'll give you 6,000. Deal? Shylock says, no deal. I want a pound of your flesh. You're late. And so then the Duke of Venice gets involved and there's a big court case. And the lawyer for the Christians, he says, you can take a pound of the flesh, but if you drop a drop of blood, then you're going to have to pay him back. And all this kind of stuff. So the Christians conspire together to invent all sorts of laws in the middle of the open courtroom in order that Shylock doesn't get what he is actually legally entitled to. And Shylock says, you Christians, you've got slaves, haven't you? You incarcerate them, you whip them. Am I judging you? You've got a contract with them and I've got a contract with this guy. It's one rule for you and another rule for me. Are you law-abiding or are you not? Do you not seek revenge? Now I am seeking revenge. Is it not your right? It is my right too. But the Christians, who are so high and mighty, they speak to Shylock about mercy. Give mercy to Antonio, who's only a bit late. Don't be so cold-hearted. And then 5 minutes later, they're digging through old manuscripts to find a law. And finally Shylock says, alright, fuck it. Just give me my 3,000 and I'll leave. And they say, oh, Shylock, you've pissed us off now. Now we're going to take you to the cleaners. All the Christians, the Duke, everybody, the lawyers, they all gang up on him. They take half his fortune and they force him to convert to Christianity. So he has to leave his Jewish community. And then they kick him out. And then the Christians have a nice party. The end. That is Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. I was really surprised at this movie. What am I supposed to make of it? In that play, the Christians, they sort of guilt trip Shylock, saying, don't you have any mercy? And 5 minutes later, they're inventing laws and twisting it, hurting the guy, embarrassing him, ruining his life, and then they go and have a jolly knees up and sing along down the pub. I mean, maybe Shakespeare is writing about how he experiences Christians and their arrogance, what it's like in England in 1600. The people say, we're Christians, we're superior. At that time, Britain was a very powerful nation in the world. It had sea power, technology. And what about Shylock? See, this is what I think about Shylock, He had money to lend because he had been careful He had dotted the I's and crossed the T's, and he had worked hard, and he had conserved his money. He put it in a nice savings account. He was smart about money. Whereas the Christians, they have a lot of swagger. They take risks. They come late to the party and then pay double. They're full of bravado. I don't know, it's something good about it, isn't it? Swashbuckling Christians. Whereas the Jews, they're kind of tight. They're tight. They're accountants. They kind of clasping on with their claws. Well, I think you have to be the Jew first, because the Jew is like the animal. The Jew is the animal that knows what is what. You have to know the rules before you can open the throttle. That's the order of play. They're like Jesus says that the seed has to be planted deep in the soil. Otherwise the sun will scorch it and the birds will eat it. It'll be trampled underfoot and the weeds will get in the way. Planting it deep in the solar plexus, where the animal is there. Now you've got an animal inside of you. Maybe it's a crocodile. Maybe it's an emu, who knows? Could be anything. But you have got one. Just like the Sphinx. That animal is unique to you. It is your signature. It is your core. And there is no core but that. Your life relies on that animal. Because the solar plexus is the center of your identity. There is no consciousness without subconsciousness. Consciousness does not live alone. It rests on a foundation. And that foundation is animal. It is an intelligence at the level of animal that is manifested as these inner characters. On Earth, everything that we see, including our psychosomatic planetary body, is a representation, a spatial representation of our intelligence, the different tiers of intelligence that we have. This was Gurdjieff's magnificent and critical insight. Spiritual people always want to go up, but consciousness does not exist alone. It rests on the tower of the subconscious. The animal is always there, and in fact the animal is the one who must turn to God. That is the transformation. You must convince your animal to become a Christian. It's not so easy. It's not something that's added to the top. It's a transformation of low substances to higher. In fact, there are several different layers working together, because our waking state, our operating state, obviously is involved, the subconscious is involved, the spiritual consciousness is involved. All these parts have to work together and knit together. So Gurdjieff excused himself from the routines of society and decided that he was going to do 3 times as much. And he was going to live like those magpies, and he was going to shine, and he was going to break every single rule on the planet so that he could do more, and he could contribute something. At least his spirit. And so that he could be an honourable part of nature. What would a magpie do if a magpie was a man? And that's what you should do. They are so beautiful, those little birds. I was listening to Ouspensky this morning, and it's obvious to me that he doesn't really understand what the path is about. If I go back to science, what are the activities of science? What do scientists do? Well, they measure the physical world with their instruments, and then they think about it. So you've got the physical world, and then you've got the mental world. There's something missing there, isn't there? Feelings are missing. Scientists pretend that feelings don't exist. And if they talk about feelings, they'll say, well, we can measure the hormone level in the blood. Like they don't want to have feelings themselves. Do you see? So all their understanding of life is a lie, because they are excluding things that they damn well know exist. Their own feelings in their own chest. So it is a lie. And probably Gurdjieff's most important revelation is that we can see the truth only when the 3 forces are fused together in the solar plexus, and then the eyes of God are inside of us, and that is the only way we can know truth. And if that does not happen, then you are a kind of machine that is unable to make that conjunction happen. The truth is hidden. And the reason is that those 3 forces aren't quite fused. And it's quite shocking that Gurdjieff has revealed this, because it means that nobody on this planet seems to have known that for thousands of years. It's a critically important piece of information. And so, as I said, science is the way it is today anyway. It is a discipline that excludes one of those channels of knowledge, feelings, and therefore it does not see. Therefore it is a lie. And actually, I think I've covered it, but if you inspect very carefully what scientists do in the back rooms and in the institutions and secretly at night, you realize that they are doctoring their work in order that they can keep the show going. As for Ouspensky, what was it this morning that he said that was so disappointing? He was talking about not wasting energy. not being negative. But the problem is that that's not how the spiritual path works at all. The spiritual path does not work by not doing things. For the simple reason that life has to grow. Life lives means it creates new things, you see. And all progress is the creation of new things and should be described as the creation of new things. So for instance, if you wish to stop the wrong work of your system, then you have to develop the power of observation. And then when you see a wrong work, for instance, emotional parasitism, meaning that you combine some strong positive feelings with your thinking, you talk about saving the world, for instance, that is wrong work, and you observe it, and then you dissuade that emotional adulteration. And so you're adding some ability to yourself because you're maintaining your observational presence and you are learning how to release and relax your emotional system so that your thinking can be alone. And so you're adding something. It's not a via negativa, it's always a via positiva, because life has to grow. It has to create something new, some new ability within yourself, you see. Ouspensky does not have the taste in his mouth of magic. Because, for instance, when the three centers are fused together, something new emerges that is unexpected. It is a sort of a feeling of light and effortless ease through a hidden tunnel of light. It's like the sunlight flows through you and you start to feel carried because it comes from beyond. Because something from the beyond flows through you, understands through you, acts through you. You become a channel of the sunlight, the light of God. And so if we go back to Ouspensky's fundamental approach, which is not to be devotional, which is to be a control freak, that is a wrong approach. And of course, in the same way, there are many people on this planet who feel a lot. They feel energies. These people are unhelpful because they are unstructured. And because of the law of three, you should instantly recognize that what is required is to have both a structured and unstructured approach simultaneously. That's what the law of three means. It means to connect two things that are poles apart. And it is always difficult, and that's where the magic comes from. It's like the man and the woman are poles apart, but when they are together, something happens that is beyond them. That is the law of three. It is magical, it is from beyond, it is from outside of you. That is the whole point, because only if something comes from beyond does something grow. If it does not come from beyond, this world perishes. In time, everything decays, unless you can become a channel for the force of God that comes in from the outside. The material of the egoic material, which is so disturbing, has to be transformed and integrated and represents early crystallizations in the third story. That has to be not only released, but drawn back inside so it is integrated with the core identity. In terms of the three-centered work, as I said before, I do hear people say that they did some three-centered work today. That is wrong. The correct approach is first of all to separate the functions. In other words, you do physical work, then emotional work, then mental work. And then the next step is to try to entwine two centers together. Just two. It's not possible to do three together. It's stupid to try and do it that way. Do two. And if you carry on doing that, the pairs start to unify, and then the magic happens. And that is quite rare. I can imagine that there are a lot of Gurdjieff groups where they go off on the weekend and they do some gardening or something, and they try to have something happening in their mind whilst they're working or something like that. That's not a good enough approach, because the three center fusion does not happen when the three centers are simultaneously active. It has to be more than that. They have to be active and integrating together. So that's quite an unusual thing. Okay, I'll leave that then. Goodbye.
I can feel